There was a time, before television flickered in our living rooms, when the family would gather close to the warm glow of a radio. The world outside could be uncertain, wars, dust storms, hard times, but for an hour, voices from the speaker carried us to places of laughter, suspense, and adventure. Today we're looking back at 15 forgotten radio shows that glued families together during the golden age of radio, from the 1920s through the 1950s. These programs weren't just entertainment, they were shared memories that shaped an entire generation. 1. Fibber McGee and Molly. This comedy classic began in 1935 and quickly became a household name. Listeners laughed at Fibber's tall tales and Molly's quick wit, but the real star was that famous overstuffed closet. Every week, when the door creaked open, an avalanche of junk sent audiences howling. For 2 decades, the show kept families smiling through the Depression and World War II, but by the 1950s, television comedy stole its thunder. 2. The Shadow. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. With those words, millions leaned in closer to the radio. This dark mystery series introduced Lamont Cranston, a man with the power to cloud men's minds and fight crime in the shadows. The eerie music and chilling laugh sent shivers down the spine. But as comic books and TV superheroes took over, the Shadow slowly faded from the airwaves. 3. Amos and Andy. Debuting in 1928, Amos and Andy was one of the first true radio phenomena. Families tuned in every night to follow the misadventures of 2 friends navigating city life. It was so popular that stores and movie theaters sometimes stopped business so people could listen. But as times changed, so did attitudes. Criticism of its racial stereotypes eventually pushed it off the air by the 1960s. 4. Lights Out. If you wanted to be scared stiff, Lights Out was the show to hear. Created in 1934, it delivered bone-chilling tales of ghosts, mad scientists, and otherworldly horrors. With creaking doors, screams, and crackling effects, it was the stuff of nightmares, but that's exactly why people loved it. By the 1950s, horror found a new home in television and movies, and the program went dark for good. 5. Our Miss Brooks. One of radio's most beloved sitcoms, Our Miss Brooks starred Eve Arden as a witty, long-suffering high school teacher. Premiering in 1948, it gave listeners a playful look at classrooms, crushes, and the everyday life of an underpaid teacher. Families adored it because it felt so familiar, light-hearted, but with heart. Its success led to a TV version, which eventually overshadowed the radio original. 6. Jack Benny Program. Jack Benny wasn't just telling jokes, he was telling stories about himself. With his stingy penny pinching, his dreadful violin playing, and his comic timing, Benny became a radio legend. Running from the 1930s into the 1950s, the show blended music and comedy into something truly unique. But when television arrived, Benny made the leap, and his radio days became a memory. 7. The Lone Ranger. Hi-yo Silver. Away. The Masked Man and his faithful horse thundered across the airwaves starting in 1933. Children and parents alike followed the Ranger's adventures as he fought for justice in the Old West. It was thrilling, moral, and always ended with triumph. But by the mid-1950s, television westerns galloped ahead, leaving the radio version behind. 8. Dragnet. Before it was a television staple, Dragnet was a radio drama that gave listeners a gritty, realistic look at police work. Each story began with that famous 4-note beat, dum-da-dum-dum. Jack Webb's calm, steady delivery gave it an almost documentary feel. It survived the jump to TV, but the radio show itself was largely forgotten in the process. 9. Suspense. If you wanted edge-of-your-seat storytelling, Suspense was the place to be. Debuting in 1942, it featured Hollywood stars like Orson Welles and Lucille Ball in thrilling, unpredictable stories. Families would sit together in silence, barely breathing, waiting for the shocking ending. It lasted nearly 20 years but eventually couldn't compete with television's visual thrills. 10. The Great Gildersleeve. One of the first true sitcom spin-offs, The Great Gildersleeve grew out of Fibber McGee and Molly. Throckmorton P. Gildersleeve's pompous charm and bumbling ways gave families plenty to laugh about. It was warm, funny, and just a little bit silly. Though it inspired TV sitcoms to come, its own run ended when audiences moved on from radio comedy. 11. The Green Hornet. With a buzzing theme song and fast-paced action, The Green Hornet made its debut in 1936. The story of Britt Reed, a crusading newspaper publisher by day and masked vigilante by night, gave listeners both crime-fighting thrills and mystery. Its connection to the Lone Ranger, they were written as relatives, made it even more appealing. But superheroes soon moved to comic books and television, leaving the Hornet behind. 12. You Bet Your Life. Long before game shows filled our TV screens, Groucho Marx was cracking wise on the radio. You Bet Your Life combined a quiz show with Groucho's sharp, playful banter with contestants. Families tuned in more for the laughs than the prizes. It thrived on radio but became even bigger on TV, eventually making its radio version unnecessary. 13. My Favorite Husband. Before Lucille Ball was I Love Lucy, she was starring in this charming radio comedy. The show followed Liz and George Cooper, a happily married couple with humorous everyday struggles. Listeners adored Lucille's timing and personality. But once television came calling, she brought the magic to the small screen, and radio was left behind. 14. Vic and Sod. This quirky little show, starting in 1932, was unlike anything else. It followed a small-town family through everyday conversations, funny, strange, and often touching. Its quiet, slice-of-life humor felt real, like eavesdropping on neighbors through an open window. It was loved for its uniqueness, but its gentle pace didn't survive the faster world of TV. 15. One Man's Family. Running for over 2 decades, One Man's Family was the longest-running dramatic serial in radio history. It told the story of the Barber family of San Francisco, weaving drama, heartache, and triumph into everyday life. For many listeners, it felt like catching up with old friends every week. But when soap operas moved to television, this pioneer was gradually left behind. Radio once gave us entire worlds through sound alone, cowboys, comedians, detectives, and dreamers. Families gathered around, not just to be entertained, but to share an experience together. Though many of these shows have faded into history, their echoes still remind us of a time when imagination painted the pictures. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, be sure to like this video, leave a comment about your favorite old-time radio show, and subscribe for more nostalgic stories from America's past.